Hello, everybody. It's Tara Boothby, Conversations for Restoration. And this is one of my friends. This is one of my Open Table Conference friends, actually. This is Melinda Wilson. And when I say Open Table Conference friends, it's just like that's how we met. That's part of our community. So Melinda, how do we explain who you are? How do you introduce yourself? And you like your contribution to this conversation, I guess.
I hope I can contribute in some meaningful way and not just blab. But I don't think that I think anyone that you would interview, Tara, would be someone who is contributing because we all bring an aspect of the image of God into the conversation and into meeting. And I think that that piece is so important. And that's something I'm passionate about. We were just talking about what's your passion, and part of it is coming to the realization that everyone has the image of God in them. How do we see past the outside part of someone that we would automatically judge? But I am. I was just having a conversation with a spiritual director today, and I said, what came out of my mouth, Tara, was, I want to be a mystic. And he said, well, what's a mystic? And I was like, oh, it's a test. No, it's not. But I defined it. I don't know. Like I could Google it, but I didn't. But for me, being a mystic or becoming one, or maybe I am one, but learning to see God in everything and everyone, and being aware of God, however we define God. So, and I say God in kind of the broader sense of God, because I think that being raised evangelical, being raised in the church, we have a perception of, oh, I know who God is. Well, who is God to you? That's going to be a totally different response to somebody else. Who is God to you? Even two evangelical Christians next to each other. Although I think some people would just kind of spout the, well, Jesus died on the cross. We were depraved. And, I was raised Presbyterian. So the depravity of man until God sent Jesus to take the wrath of God on Jesus so that God could look at us through Jesus. And I used to say that all the time, like, oh, God doesn't see me, he sees Jesus. And how demeaning is that? Now that I'm way
Yeah.
years beyond that, if that's the case, then I won't be able to see God in anybody. I would, if they haven't said the prayer, then I can't see anyone as the image of God. I would just see, well, that's a piece of shit. Because that's really what I was taught, is that person is worthless until they said the prayer. And how hopeless is that? That's so hopeless. So in being in on a quest to becoming a mystic, I want to see God in everyone and everything. And again, and I say God again, letting that be an expansive term, because my definition of God a year ago is different than it is now. And
Yeah.
I want to continually be on an evolving, expanding awareness of God in all God's aspects and facets. And excuse me. And so I've been meeting with a spiritual director for about the last year and a half, and that has really been transformational in my life. And a spiritual director is just someone who's coming alongside someone. They also call it a soul friend, a spiritual companion. There's no hierarchy, and I think it flies in the face of sort of evangelicalism. And I don't want to just sit here and bash evangelicalism. I think a part of me would do that. And we could talk about parts too, because I'm passionate about parts and doing parts work, being aware of what
Yeah.
part of me feels this way, what part of me feels resistant to what you're saying. Let's examine that. Let's explore that together. Let's be present with this part of me that feels awkward or uncomfortable or resistant or angry, instead of denying it or wishing it away, praying it away. Let's be present with. And I think that's something else I'm passionate about, Tara, is being someone who is present with another person. I have to start with being present to my own heart and
Yeah.
all of its parts, the ones that we don't like, the ones that we feel like we just need to beat that into submission or submit it to God, all the things that we've been taught. So if I can show up as a loving witness to you, as a loving witness to my neighbor, as a loving witness to someone a good friend or a family member, that brings so much healing and transformation because we all have this longing and need to be seen and to belong. And if we don't know that within ourselves, then we can't offer that gift of presence
Right.
to somebody else.
Yeah. And that
So,
presence is just that what's hidden in plain sight. And this companionship coming alongside of each other. And even when you're talking about mysticism, it's like and the definition of God growing and changing, it's like maybe mysticism is just leaning into this mystery that our image of God is definitely different one from the other. But maybe that's just that mysticism is, it's like, yeah, it's mysterious.
right. Exactly. It is leaning into the mystery and it's not being afraid of not having the answers. It's not being afraid of saying, I'm not sure, but I'm on exploratory journey.
Mm-hmm.
And being okay with mystery, being okay and not to gaslight anybody either or to do spiritual bypassing. Oh, that person died. Well, it's just a mystery. That's
Yeah.
not what I mean. It in that case, it would be how can I be with you in this? And how can I co-suffer alongside with you in the mystery of why this happened? And I don't,
Yeah.
yeah, that question is never answered satisfactorily anyway.
And even there's two things I'm thinking right now, but one thing is practicing other focused self-giving love, you know, is mysterious.
Hmm.
Just that, just loving people, love as the expression of our faith is mysterious. So I want to put some out there and then see what you say, because you're talking about like God and Jesus. And I've read this amazing book. Actually, Kathy was reading it too because we're in the same class, called Holy Envy. And Barbara Brown Taylor writes, Christians seem to feel they have a lot of ownership over the word Jesus that other people aren't entitled to. But there is this sort of like this weirdness of being raised that we have. That language makes sense to me, that the Christians own the word God and
Hmm.
own the word Jesus. And then you're starting to talk about it in a very different way.
Well, I read that book too. I was
Did you?
fortunate that we were on that road trip together, so we listened to it, and I was it res I like I got to go back and read her other books too, and read that one again because that I think a few years ago I heard well I heard her name like maybe 15 years ago, and we used to get, or longer ago than that, we used to get the magazine Guideposts. I don't know if you got that in Canada, but it was sort of Christiany, and then but it would subtly introduce a little bit more fringy as we would well that it, maybe out of the box people. And I remember years ago going, oh my gosh, that's like heretical, that's not Christian, it's too liberal. That would be something that I would have thought and scared, like I'm not reading Guideposts anymore because it's too liberal. They're having someone like Barbara Brown Taylor. But I remember hearing her name and she would write articles for Guideposts decades ago. And so that name was like, oh, don't go near that one. And that's so much of what my Christianity was like. It was more of don't go near there, be afraid of that. Don't go in that store. You might become demonized. Don't go. And that was even in the more as Paul Young would say, charismaniac. Because I say that, I don't want to say all charismatics were like that, but it was very superstitious, to be honest. And it was very religious. And even though it was like, oh, we're all free, but yet don't do that because you're going to get slimed. That was a very common word. Um, and years later, I'm like, well, wait a minute. If greater is he who is in me than he that's in the world, why am I afraid? And so I feel like so much of what how I grew up was it was more about being afraid of something than being led with love. And
Yes.
a friend of
Yeah.
mine years ago said, let love guard you. And there's a scripture that says, guard your heart. And it's like, wait a minute, what does that even mean? And then that was interpreted as basically be afraid of anything that is outside of this box. And so years ago, really, really, one of my best friends will let love guard you. And I wrestled with that, scratched my head for many years until I, as I've been having greater experiences and encounters or revelation of what love is, oh my goodness, love can set a boundary, not out of fear, but out of love. I love myself enough. I love that
Yeah.
person enough to say, I'm letting love set this boundary, not out of punishment or because I'm afraid of you, but rather because I love me and I love you. And self love was not ever something that was to be a goal or an aim. It was always others first, and but to the detriment of yourself and to the point of feeling self-hatred. And I'm a very passionate person. I feel deeply, I do things with passion. And so when I would be taught something, and now I look back and it was so much really toxicity, and I would go so far as to say spiritual abuse. And I know I don't like using those terms necessarily because they are just bandied about, oh, it's spiritual abuse, I'm traumatized. And now it's become almost trendy, and if you don't say that, then you really haven't been hurt. And I would never take any of those things lightly. So it's taken me a year and a half through the help of my spiritual director to be able to actually look at that and go, that was spiritual abuse. Because if I was led by fear, convinced to not do something because I something will happen to me, or the revert or the sort of converse of transactional, if
Yep.
you do this, then God will do this for you. And that's abusive because it's manipulative, and it's almost bribery in a sense, or extortion in a sense, if you want to call it that. So I
It,
don't like being dramatic about that, and I
but
know
I don't
people
think
are,
it is
yeah.
dramatic either, Melinda. Like I want to honor this with you for a second. What I hear you saying and what I have recently had an epiphany about is talking about the bad things that have happened to me gets
Mm-hmm.
me listening to myself. And the old belief that like do not speak bad about fellow Christians, or like, or you can't have communion, or like all this crap, it just kept me locked in
Mm-hmm.
my self-loathing. And then I kept doing things to be better. But when I actually, like, you sitting with your spiritual director and talking about those things that hurt you, to get to a place where you're like, that's really bad hurt,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
is important. And what is happening to us, or what happened to you or what happened to me when we didn't hear ourselves about how we were hurt by the people who were supposed to love us the most.
And especially in going into spiritual direction for myself,
Yeah.
I have to be, and as a healer of any kind, as a therapist, as an Emmanuel minister, just as a good friend, if I'm not in touch with those places in me, I really can't help someone else examine those things because I'll be out of touch with myself. And I feel like it is vitally important to be doing the inner work of being with myself. And again, I avoid, or I have a tendency like, oh, that's getting trendy. No, we're doing something else. Or I'm not doing it because everyone says you should. But I believe that the act of presence with myself, and even when I'm doing, I'm trying to call it a different word. My whole job is running an inner healing prayer community organization. But when I say, I've stopped saying, oh, you need to do the work. And I want to use the vernacular of being present with.
Yes.
So, and even exercise or practice, but I want to take it even deeper and beyond exercise or practice, because those can become religious and dogmatic too. Like, oh gosh, I didn't do my exercise today. I'm going to gain weight. Or however, I didn't pray today. That can get in there. And so if I practice the beingness and the presence, I want to be present to those parts of me that are feeling envious, scared, afraid, doubtful, insecure, and they're longing, those parts within us, as well as everyone on earth is longing to be seen, longing to have someone come alongside them and say, you belong.
Yeah.
I am with you. I love you. I see you. I don't think that we have been trained. I don't think that we have, most of us haven't experienced that. Fortunately, it's becoming more trendy, if you will. But I, again, not doing it because it's trendy, but maybe it's becoming trendy because people are having the realization that this is what I've been looking for my whole life, is a place of belonging, is a place of
Oh,
presence,
yes.
just being present to. And when I can be that to myself, then I can offer that gift to you as well.
Well, and the thing is too, and it's like the contemplative life enriches the active life. And without that getting slow and the presence and how then we're just performing and performing.
Mm-hmm.
And getting slow, and so listening to you and hearing our friends talk about our pain. So when you talk about superstition in the church and your church experience, I'm like, oh, I was totally superstitious,
Mm-hmm.
but I can admit that I was superstitious because superstition was evil.
Yeah.
However, of course, I was superstitious.
Yeah.
You know, you believe if then, and like if I do this, then this,
Yes.
or if I do a magical prayer or something, then I get to go to heaven. It's so funny to think of that as superstition.
And it is funny to think of that. And I would have been afraid to label it that way, but I have an example of that from years ago. And I was involved with the healing rooms, and I was really, it was beautiful experience of community coming together and learning all these different kind of inner healing models. But a mentor of mine gave me a list of about 40 statements, and they were affirmation type things. And the instruction was given, do one of these every day for 40 days. And by the end of 40 days, you will be free from this particular trauma or stronghold. And I was like, okay, like a good person who wants to get something done, I'm going to take this to heart and I'm going to do it. And I remember I was on a road trip driving by myself, kind of having just my own adventure, and but I was really on a spiritual quest as well. And I remember missing one day. I was faithful, man. I was religious. Here you go. I was religious in doing these every day, and I missed like day 22. And I thought, I panicked. I'm like, oh shit, I'm gonna have to start all over again. I gotta go back to one. I got 22 days through. And I remember the panic and the grief and the sorrow and the disappointment in myself. Talk about superstitious, man. Like seriously, legalistic. And yet that's what I believed. That's what I was told. If you do this, and I don't even remember if I got through them. I might have given up and then just like, well, forget it. Never going to get over that one. And I just felt disheartened and disappointed in myself. And it just, then what does that do? It brings us into a
Yeah.
spiral of shame. And for me, who is very passionate about life and about, I want to do this right so that unto this, if I do this unto this, I will be obedient. I will do this. And I really, my heart was really to get free from whatever this was. And so it made me not feel good about myself and have to start all over. And so that I think about that Melinda 15 years ago, and instead of going, oh, you stupid idiot. Now I might have done that a few years ago, like, oh, Mel, I'm so sorry. It's all right. And let's just laugh at it, and we can release that and let that go. But that's just one example of many of those superstitions, and
Yeah.
that really would get into a rut. And it's fear-based. That's the thing, Tara. That's led by fear. There's nothing about that
Totally.
that is love leading. It's a fear. Even though it promises freedom, the compulsion or the motivation behind it truly is fear.
100%. And this goes back to the word transactional that you used before. And then so like the conversation I had with Jason Clark, we used more explicit words about feeling transactional misuse. But if it's like my experience in a legalistic upbringing, there's this subtle, not subtle grooming that we are groomed to be in transactional relationships. I believed relationships were transactional.
Mm-hmm.
So then by the time I get to a place like you, where it's like, do this for 40 days and I miss one day, I don't need to know what my mentor would say about, is it okay that I missed a day? Because he might have given grace. I can just like abuse myself
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
because I already it's wired inside of me. And I think when we start to heal and like feel the pain of seeing how I misuse myself, I think you get this too. We've misused ourselves to be transactional beings. And it's a grief and loss process. It took me years to grieve that and hang out with the word whore. That was the word that I hung out with. Me and the word whore. And that was a painful place, but it was
Yeah.
refining
Yeah.
and beautiful to hang out with that view of like how I was misusing myself as a transactional person.
But that goes right in line with God using you to fill in the blank. Because
Yeah.
if God uses us, then of course you're going to misuse yourself and let others misuse you. And at the end of the day, that we feel like a wrung out sponge because, like, I've got nothing left to give. And that was YWAM. I was in Youth with a Mission. And it's not to badmouth any organization, but the the mission was we got to get people saved. God's going to use you to do this. I cringe. I really try to release grace when I see things come across Instagram or whatever, of, oh, God just wants to use you. And I thought, we would never say that. Oh, Tara, I really want to use you, to benefit my life somehow. And we would never say that or do that with a friend. And yet we put that on God and then believe it because we've been taught that. But back to what you said, we really have, I call it, we've been programmed,
Oh,
conditioned to believe. And so then we have these programs running. It's kind of like you set up a program on your computer and it's just running in the background all the time.
yeah.
And that's what's happened. And I'm not saying, well, maybe I am. I think a lot of it is cult-like. Honestly, I'm not saying evangelical church is a cult, but there's certainly been a lot of cult-like behavior. And if you don't act like us, if you don't sing like us, pray like us, then you need to go through your discipleship program so that you can. You don't really belong until you are part of this. And then if you think outside the box or dare say maybe there shouldn't be a box, then there's not a super welcome mat laid out. I honestly, I was interviewing. I'm not going to name any names, but it took me about 8 months to run through spiritual direction schools. And I interviewed a lot of spiritual direction schools because I didn't want to invest my time or money into a school that I really didn't align with in some way. And so I remember asking one of the directors, teachers of one of the schools, I said, "Hey, I'm in a place where I finally being free to go. I wonder if God is a gender, and maybe God is he, she, they, and I'm not trying to be all everyone needs to have a pronoun because again, I'm not jumping on that bandwagon, but going, I isn't God again part of the mystery outside of that?" And he said, Melinda, you could not bring that kind of question to this group because it would probably trigger people and cause them to be uncomfortable. And I'm like, okay, this is not the group for me. So even something like that, where people aren't willing to even have those questions, and that would scare too many people. That's a program, though. It's like that one programmer wiring of God is this. God is a man. He's sitting on a throne. This is what we think he might look like. And if you ask a different, it's going to cause that program to glitch. I don't want to dare put a little, I have like a picture of like a little metal thing going into a electric box going, we're going to short circuit. And I think that people are so afraid of like, don't disrupt the program. And it's this unconscious, subconscious program that has been running in the back of our brain for so long. And truly, it is a program if we're looking at it from a neuroscience way that we've been wired that way. But I've got my religious programming or my programming about who or what God is or what Christianity is. And it's cognitive dissonance when you start presenting something
Yeah.
else. And that's the glitch, I think. That's what I could call cognitive dissonance, kind of a glitch in the system. Like, what, what? And then, oh, wait. Okay. Just stop. And so,
But I
um,
mean, even the cognitive dissonance, or just this like, what is the gender of God, gets us looking back at what do we believe? Because
yeah,
actually, you know, in in Christian folklore, calling the scriptures folklore right now is just helpful for me. Because I want to reclaim the word Christian. I like that word, but when I refer to the scriptures as folklore, it's just helpful. It might change in a year.
yeah.
Um, but in the creation story, the Trinitarian creation story, the Trinity is there, and humans were created in their image, and then gender came. So when we get uncomfortable about things,
Interesting.
and then we go
Yeah.
back, and it's like, I never read that
Mm,
before,
mm,
when I had to hold unswervingly to the group think about, man and woman.
mm-hmm,
And when I can go back and say, well, I'm in the image of God before I'm gender, it
mm-hmm.
gives me a lot of freedom to just love all of my people around me, and I don't have to think about any of those other things. They can be in their own body, in their own experience, and I'm in my own body, in my own experience.
Yeah, and that is a place again of deprogramming in a sense of
Yeah.
what have I believed about God, the gender of God. But there's so many. I feel like there's innumerable more programs that we've been conditioned to believe. And again, these programs are running so subconsciously that we don't even know that they're there. Kind of like,
Yeah.
oh, I see a red truck, and I always think of this because maybe I had an experience with a red truck as a child, or I was
Yeah.
taught that red trucks they only belong to redneck men, and I'm just throwing this out there. I have a red truck, so I'm not a redneck man. But anyway, it's a Toyota 4Runner if anyone's interested. Great car, 211,000 miles. It
Are
is.
you selling it?
No. Oh no, she's gonna be with me for at least another 10 years. Her name is Red, and she's driven across the country multiple times. I just put 6,000 miles on her in the last 6 weeks.
You are
So,
such, I did not realize what a road trip girl you
oh
are.
yeah.
Like, you're a nomad, hey?
Oh, I am. I have always, yes, from a very young age, really, and lived overseas and lived tons of different places by the time I was like 25. And I just want to explore the world. That is something else that from a young age, I used to read encyclopedias and look at flags of other nations as a kid and be so fascinated with, oh my gosh, they dress like that in Switzerland or Papua New Guinea or the Congo. I would be very, very fascinated. I memorized flags of nations. Oh, Burundi flag. Oh my gosh, that's a cool one. And I think actually the Canadian flag is one of my favorites. The red maple, beautiful. Like I could be Canadian. Actually, my great grandfather was Canadian, and so I do have Canadian blood in me. I'm gonna say
Lucky.
yes.
A
I
little,
very
that's why you're so sweet, all the maple syrup up here. Um,
yes, exactly.
so then, and we'll get back on track with all of our talking of sort of this, like, it's okay to lean into debunking some of the things you've always
Mm.
believed, because maybe you'll believe something better. You're a very brave person. Nomad, like this nomad type life, there's a bravery. How have you thought about that? Like, how are you able to be brave and just like road trip so much because you really don't live in a permanent address.
I don't think about it. I never have thought about that I'm brave. I've just thought about life is too short to not explore. I think, uh, yeah, an empty passport is an empty life. And I think that the world is there for us to explore. And now that I'm on more of this journey of journey into mysticism, if you will, I've just coined that phrase right now. Nobody trademark it, but journey into mysticism. I have always been, okay, maybe I'm just like, ooh, I always have been because I've always been interested and fascinated by other places. And I've never been America-centric,
Mm,
whatever you call it. I've never been in this place of America's the best country on earth. Maybe I was, and then I went overseas, but I've been going overseas since I was 16 and seeing the beauty of other cultures. And now at the place that I'm in, I I want to travel overseas even more because I get to see the image of God in these beautiful faces and culture and foods that's so different than
yeah,
mine. And how boring just to explore one aspect or facet of God in
yeah,
just ourselves. And yet I know within this nation, within Canada, there's so many beautiful multicultural people that don't look like me. But I also love exploring customs and of other nations. Like, I don't want to do the touristy thing. Take me to someone's home in Morocco or in Mongolia where I can experience how you live day to day and see that. What a beautiful
yeah.
tapestry. And so I've been to like 25 countries. I lived in Australia for 5 years and I lived in the United Kingdom for 2 years. I have spent time in Canada back in '93 and Ontario, 3 months. I don't know if that doesn't count. I don't say I lived there because 3 months doesn't count. But
You
yeah,
did
just
some time. You did some
I
time.
did a little bit of time, but I want to do a lot more time in Canada. Like, if you want to
Uh,
relegate me and say you have to go to Canada, I'd be like, okay, thank you, bye. You know.
well, I remember too. So this is like when, and this makes to me this just light bulbs go on and understanding you, and even you're leaning into the word mysticism because when we were together in the Canadian Rockies, and I it just enjoyed watching the beauty of you having this spiritual encounter with nature, and
Hmm.
it was all over your face. And it wasn't just a like, oh, this is pretty. It was like I don't know what was happening with you in nature, if it was like nature was an icon you were being present with, but it was beautiful.
I would say I'm obsessed with nature. I mean, I have a redwood tree on my arm, and redwood trees I can talk about all day, but that being in Canmore in Alberta, it looked like a movie set. I could not believe it was real. And it was, as Paul Young said, staggering. And I thought that word, I have visceral experience in nature. My body, I feel it from head to toe. I feel my body, it's almost overwhelming. But I don't want to leave it. But it's just looking at a mountain, especially mountains and trees, but animals too. I can have that same looking at ducklings, baby ducks or quail here in the West in Idaho, baby quail. I'm like, I mean, I don't even know how and it doesn't matter that I'm the age I am. I have been like that since I was a child, and I'm very grateful I haven't lost that wonder and that awe
Yeah,
of when I can look at a butterfly and be overwhelmed. And maybe that is part of being a mystic, but I have to have nature. Like, that is something that I can't go a day without it. I feel like it's as much as I need food is I have to be in nature. And so if I'm in a city, I will find a park. The first thing I do when I get somewhere, I open up Google Maps and go, where am I? Look for the green space. That's where I'm going. Even if it's just a tiny little neighborhood park with a swing and a slide, but it has grass and some trees, that's where I'm going to go. And I feel so connected to the earth and to nature. In fact, I'm in a course for forest therapy, and it's connecting with nature, taking people therapeutically through forests. And it started with bathing in Japan in like the 80s, and they discovered the healing power that trees have. And then researchers, scientists started studying the effects of each tree, like the
Yeah.
red maple tree or the birch tree has all these different healing properties. What tree do I need to go and sit under if I want a beautiful meditative experience? What tree do I need to go touch if I want to get rid of this headache? And so I feel like studying that is like, if you don't believe in some kind of creator, where'd all this come from? Where there is a
Yeah.
remedy for every ailment in nature. And so that's a whole other thing of connecting with the divine and experiencing healing in nature, but even being more specific to why do I feel so pulled to touch that pine tree right now? What is it? What is it in that tree that can benefit me? And sometimes I don't even know, but energetically, I need to experience that, and changing my own frequency and energy in me in connecting with nature. And that's been proven too. It's everything is energy and frequency. And like sitting at a base of a waterfall has the most negative ions that we can experience on Earth, and letting that come and heal us. So I'm I've always been obsessed with nature. When I was a kid in school, I didn't want to be sitting in the classroom. Gross. I just wanted to be outside. I wanted to be in
Yeah.
nature. I wanted to be climbing trees, exploring paths that other people haven't explored, and I'm still that way. So, in a sense, I feel like that childlikeness and wonder, I am all about that.
I
And
think it's interesting too because there's like the deprogramming your language and how things are have already been in us or about us our whole lives. But then when we could lean in to more into love, trust more about
mm,
love. I'm guessing for you there's more freedom and there's even more revelation of the God that you know in nature now that you've processed through some of that like healing of your old sort of transactional way of being. Does that make sense?
absolutely, like my view or understanding of God
Or
through
maybe your
nature, or
presence, like your ability to how you're talking about nature right now. Melinda,
mm.
15 years, I don't think she would have talked about it this way.
I wouldn't have talked about it this in this vernacular, but I still would have been like, I love nature and need to be in nature without having language
Yeah,
for it necessarily. I feel like my vocabulary is expanding, and even just as scientific research comes out about nature and then the connection with the divine, you can't separate that. Like Saint Francis of Assisi,
yeah,
that's, my friends are like, you're totally channeling Saint Francis. That deer came up to you and it didn't come up to me. But I think that comes from the stillness that I have allowed to sort of elude me for a long time, because I'm very much a go, go, go person. And so coming
yeah,
more into stillness and presence and emanating this, I am a safe person because I'm a safe person for myself first, and so therefore I can be
yeah.
safe for you. And but I'll give you an example too of how much healing I've received from nature, which you can't separate that from God. And I'm not a pantheist, but or an animist, but I do find a lot of value in both. But redwoods are they've been so special to me since childhood. Raised going to the redwoods, and I would do a commercial for the redwood forest anytime. But they're only in a certain location in Northern California, in the northern central California coast. Um, and they don't grow anywhere else. There are some places in actually Japan, there are some groves, but they're a tree that you have to go on a quest to find. And I think that's intentional. I really do. They're not just everywhere you look. There's a pine tree, there's a maple tree. Well, redwoods are not just everywhere you look. You have to be on an intentional quest to go to the redwoods. And but last year I was among them, and one just called to me. I do talk to trees. In fact, at your conference, Tara, I met someone that she said her shirt said, I'm a tree hugger. I'm like, do you really hug trees, or are you just wearing that shirt because it looks cool? She's like, oh no, I do. And then thus began a conversation. I'm like, I know there's others out there. There's others out there, but this one tree was just calling to me, and I leaned against it, and I felt an immediate download of some healing and unforgiveness that I had, I didn't know, and was really in touch with these parts of me that were
Oh,
holding on to some from a very traumatic experience at 14. And I was undone because there was such safety in this tree, and I could just feel arms around me. Whether you want to call that God or I had such a connection with the tree, I don't really care. I just know that I felt loved, and then was just releasing all these tears and snot intermingled, dripping down the bark of this tree. And the redwood's like, that's totally fine. And if people turn this off, going, oh my gosh, Tara's interviewing a tree talker. Yes, I am.
everybody
And
from BC is just like, who is this woman and how can I find her?
and I'm gonna soon be leading like therapeutic healing sessions in forest bathing and forest
Yeah,
therapy, truly. But
sign me up.
it's called silvotherapy. It
Oh,
really is a thing. But when we can, and I'll sign you up. But when we can experience God in ways that there is no box for that. I'm not even gonna say outside the box. Like just a friend gave me a sticker that said, forget the box, think outside. In other words, get outside and
yeah.
let that kind of guide your thoughts and your heart. And honestly, nature is, there's no competitiveness in nature. There's no comparison. There's no transactional relationship. Everyone, all the parts are doing their role. And there's a banana slug in the redwood forest, and they're only in the redwood forest, and it's there. And I don't like bugs, y'all. And slugs are disgusting looking, but a banana slug is like bright yellow, and they grow up to about 5 inches long. Most of them are about 3 inches long, and they're gorgeous, but they're part of the redwood tree ecosystem. They only live about 3 years, as opposed to a redwood tree that lives up to 3,000 years. And yet they all have their parts, they all have their roles. And I just think about that scripture about Paul's talking about the body of Christ. The eye can't say to the ear, I wish I was like you, and da da da. And we see that represented in nature. And I feel like one of the biggest answers to everything is get in nature. I really do. I
Yeah.
feel like if we can sit and be still, look at a tree, look at a mountain, sit on the grass and just be. And I think thinking about the life of Jesus, he was probably outside most of the time. I know he met with people, but I'd love to see how he interacted with nature. And then I'm thinking of the fig tree. I need to study that story and see what did he really mean by cursing it. But in any way, any case, there's certainly a divine connection when we get out in nature and just get past all the stuff in the program we've believed. And I think if you're having a problem understanding who God is or what God is, go sit in nature
And I
and
think too, how you can talk about it and be with it. And it's just the irony of when we were taught to believe that other people were superstitious or superstition is wrong. So old me could have judged this
Mhm.
conversation because I was supposed to. Um, but I'm not superstitious now, but I totally believe this story. And because I believe in science.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
so there's roots of science in this, and we have good research that says, yes, get into nature. It's good for your mental health. It's good for healing trauma. And we have all sorts of old medicines that say, yeah, this is how you use this tree or that. And if we are listening, what's speaking to us? So if we're listening, what parts of nature are speaking to us, whether that's like actually or you're instinctually you went and sat under a tree and were present with yourself and you had psychological healing. But if you weren't listening, if you didn't say, oh, I talk to trees, you might have missed the opportunity to love yourself.
Absolutely. And that goes hand in hand with listening to your body.
Yeah.
And what is my body feeling drawn toward right now? Or who is my body feeling repelled by? Not in a judgmental way, but in an energetic way of my body knows faster than my conscious mind can even think to come into judgment. I have a real quick story about that because I'm also really passionate on the road to learning how to listen to my body and even doing muscle testing and things like that. It's a whole other world, it's a whole other conversation, but it's all legitimate and valid and science proven biological, like our body knows. But listening to my body, how does my body feel in this place? How does it, oh, not feeling so, I don't know why. Don't judge it, just walk away. Or, oh, I feel pulled to this. I feel compelled to walk toward that tree or that person, and listening to what my body's saying. Same with if I feel pain in my body, what is my body saying? What what are you saying? But you can even turn your attention. That's part of being present, not just like internal parts, but oh, my knee hurts. Okay, knee, what do you need? What are you trying to tell
Yeah.
me right now?
Yeah.
And so that's like I would say we're listening to our body, tuning into us holistically. My internal parts, oh, I'm feeling anxious. Okay, what part of me needs my attention right now? As same knee, okay, knee, what's going on? Help me understand what you need.
Or like feelings like hello shame,
Yeah.
what's going on, or like hello
Yeah.
sadness, or anxiety. But what this is just so fascinating because before we pressed record, we were talking about listening prayer. And it's just this irony of like, you know, the old tradition of Christianity that was raised in, and Barbara Brown Taylor's like the ownership thing. Christians own Jesus, but we don't listen to Jesus. We don't say, hey Jesus, how are you praying for so and so? Or hey Jesus, what do you
Hmm.
think? Who do you say that I am, Jesus? We don't, and then we don't listen. So of course we're not going to listen to nature. Of course we're not going to listen to our bodies. Then we start listening to our body. We start listening to our feelings. We start listening to nature. Um, but that listening to Jesus thing, or listening to the God that you know, is vitally important to our health as well.
Hmm. Hmm. And it does take stillness. And
Yeah.
I've appreciated centering prayer, being introduced a couple of years ago to that. And at first I was resistant to it just simply because I wasn't used to it. And I think when we can look at resistance in ourselves and just be curious with it and go, huh, what's going on here that I'm feeling resistance to this, instead of going, in Jesus' name, I rebuke you, resistance, or whatever, how I was taught. I rebuke you, doubt. I rebuke you, fear. Of going, I'm turning toward that in curiosity,
Yeah.
just like getting to know somebody. And this centering prayer, which is really a contemplative exercise and centuries old, of just picking one sacred word and focus. Like it could be I just always land on the word
Yeah.
be, and but you could pick tree, light, love, Jesus, God, whatever, and letting that be the one central focus. And I put on a timer. I have a centering prayer app, and let all those thoughts kind of, well, we're not supposed to, like, not it, don't say even the word supposed to. When a thought comes, not resisting it, just being with it, but then letting it go. Don't
Yeah.
resist the thought, let it come, let it go, observe it, let it go, and then come back to that word. That helps us, give us a focus. But we're not trying to pray for anything. We're not trying to make something happen because I spent so much time in prayer. It's the opposite of that. And I just reading recently about meditation, and I can't quote who it's from. I don't even know. Maybe Buddha said it, but I don't even know. But it's not about, as I follow several meditation teachers, but it's not about trying to become something. It's about letting go of those things that would hold us back from seeing who we really are, seeing who God really
Yeah.
is, and letting those kind of layers peel off. Like it's like a flower opening up. I mean, I really like the how Buddhism has kind of taken on the lotus flower, just simply because, and I'm not trying to tout Buddhism, but the more I look at this, like the Holy Envy book, it's like, oh my gosh, what part of Buddhism would actually help improve my life? And part of that is the stillness, and then the lotus flower being a representation of like opening up to God, and what petals
Wow.
are falling to the ground, things I don't need anymore, but also those petals aren't useless anymore. It's like, okay, that was part of the story I used to believe, and it
Yeah.
can go into the ground like fertilizer. How beautiful that is. So nothing is wasted and nothing is like thrown out like, oh gosh, that was a horrible belief. I was just talking to a young friend of mine the other day, and she's so wise, and she just is not even 30, and we were talking about deconstruction, and she's like, yeah, I don't throw anything out. Yes, we need to deconstruct, but instead of just throwing those pieces of wood, if you're looking at like a house, instead of it being a wall, make it into a bench now where people can sit and rest. And I love that. So I'm
Yeah.
taking the old structure, the programming of really gross things I used to believe, but now we're tearing that wall down and now making it into a bench or a table where we can sit and fellowship and go, okay, this is now made into something beautiful. Or that old belief, yeah, that is like a petal falling into the ground. Now it is used as fertilizer.
Yeah.
It's going back into the earth to now build something new, to make something beautiful. And where I see a danger of like deconstruction is when people go so
Yeah.
far the other way, it's like, I'm just throwing all that out. And I was so grateful to my spiritual director who said, Melinda, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. I'm like, yeah, 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 yeah. But my tendency to like, no, all in, I'm all or nothing. And I just want all of it gone so I can have something new without actually honoring that old stuff to going, we can repurpose this to make it beautiful. We can repurpose. Yeah, we don't need to believe that anymore, but boy, it can be fertilizer now to actually help something new and beautiful to grow out of that. That is transmuting something that
Mm.
from you to ah. And I see that as transmutation. It's like taking something that would be harmful or destructive or toxic. How do we transmute that? In other words, how do we transform that into something beautiful? And I think that's what God does. Just looking at the definition of love is I'm going to make something beautiful out of this and
Well, and when we, when we realize that we've had trauma in our past, and we start to seek healing. I mean, if we don't seek healing, we're going to just run in the opposite direction, and then we're at
Mhm.
risk of something else. And so this, like, what we're talking about, there's this the Buddhist way, the meditative way of being who you already are.
Mhm.
I'm just being who I already am. And that's some of the healing with when we heal from trauma is then I can be who I already was. And then I'm not at risk of like overcorrecting into some other transactional performance driven way because that is what hurt me.
Right, right. It can swing to the you're
Yeah.
just as legalistic about not believing that this or the other as you were in this camp. And we can see that in politics. I mean, it's all dualistic. It's all
Yeah.
dualism. It's all separation. It's all division. And it's within the church. It's within politics. It's within race. It's within everything we see. And I think that the ultimate enemy or the ultimate root of all this evil is the idea of separation. Because if we're separate from ourselves, we've separated from our own
Yeah.
selves. And we've been taught that, less of me, more of God, and just beating myself down. So then that is separation. I am separate from myself. I'm separate from God unless I do this. Then I'm separate from you. And the Christians are separate from the non-Christians. The Republicans are separate from the Democrats, whatever political system you're in. And so the lie of separation is so insidious, and I see its tendrils and tentacles in every aspect of society in the world. And that's what has caused, I believe, wars and division of every kind is I'm separate from you and you're separate from me. And one thing that, again, back to nature, because if we look at the design of nature, the redwood forest, I got to bring this into it, Tara, because there's no separation. Redwoods up get to 300 feet tall. They're the tallest living organisms on Earth. You would think that their root system is very deep. It's no deeper than 6 feet, and it's not
Wow.
even that wide. How do they stay up at 300 feet? Because they're all intertwined. I'm locking my fingers together if you're not watching. All the root systems are intertwined, where so much so that they are one living organism. They're one being with different roots, with different expressions of each other.
Yeah.
And so when one, like even a different colony of trees 10 miles away is hurting, or there's a drought, or there's fire, that the redwood forest grove over here will actually send nutrients to heal and to transform the grove that's 10 miles away, because they are all connected. There is no separation. If there was separation, they would die. And they are constantly feeding information back and forth to each other. And that's why coming back to nature is there is no separation. If they wanted to stand
No.
on their own, they would die. They cannot survive. And so then they are actually one being, there, the oneness of no separation. And but as soon as I start asking questions like, well, if I do that, is God going to be displeased? That immediately implies separation. Or if I
Yep.
go into that store, is God not going to be with me? Separation. Or if I do this, is God not going to be pleased? Separation. If that person's not going to my church, then they're not really in separation. And so I feel like separation is the number one enemy of the earth, of humankind, of the human race. So that I look at that person who's over in that country, or that looks very different than me, and says, you're so different. We're separate from each other, and we're
Yep.
not. And my heart, I wish we could sit down with each other and hear someone's story and ask them and be curious with them, and what freedom, what healing that would bring to say, I know we have such different opinions, and we look different, and we sound different, and we smell different, and we eat different, but tell me about you. What brought you to
Yeah.
this place? What healing could occur? But because of the live separation, that's scary to do.
I think
I
it's,
don't want to do that.
and I just hear it goes back to, the when you all the traveling that you've done, and the just the vividness, like this is part of the healing, is like what was beautiful and passionate for me and good for me, and then as I grow and heal and have more spiritual healing, more psychological healing, things just get more vivid. So what was maybe more of this a traveling experience, that's like an interface experience where I'm like, oh, I'm sort of like observing. But as we grow in maturity, we go and we travel and we're having these interfaith, and we can learn about who we are as spiritual beings by learning who somebody else is as a spiritual being, even if we don't have to agree with them, and we don't have to convert them. We don't have to convert anybody.
Take the pressure off, y'all. No, they don't need to be converted.
No, they don't need to. Because I don't need to.
Right, right, right. I want to share a quick story. We probably need to go soon, but of letting love lead.
Mm.
And it was so quick. So I'm not sorry. I was in the redwood forest. I am in the west part of the states right now, and I am from California, where the redwoods grow. And that could be a tree too, although that I think that was some other other book. But it was dusk. It was dusk in the redwoods is probably 6:30, because they're so tall and they block a lot of light, and it doesn't get very bright on the forest floor. But I was leaving this park, and I was seeing this beautiful, it looked like a huge burl. If you can look it up. They look like a giant knot on the side of a tree. It's not just redwoods, but a burl. And a lot of wood creations an artist can make. But this redwood tree had this huge, what I thought looked like a burl at the bottom of it, the base of it. If you don't know what they look like, go look them up right now. Just stop this video and go look up a redwood tree. But and all these little sprouts were growing out of it. And I was so curious about it. And I tried to Google lens it, but no one would give me an answer. And I just thought, oh my gosh, there's more mystery about this redwood tree. And out of the corner of my eye, I see a figure approaching. And before I knew what I was doing, and before my brain, my judgmental part of me or my assessment, we all judge, we all make lightning judgments. We see someone in a hoodie and it's dark and we feel immediate danger, danger, danger. Well, this figure approaches me and I said, "Hey, do you know anything about redwoods?" I was compelled. I believe in that moment, I was led by love to ask this person about redwoods before I even, as I saw him coming toward me. And I'll just try to explain. He was probably 6'1", probably in his mid 50s, hard to tell, no front teeth at all. And we could make that assessment of, oh, meth addict or whatever. Looked gaunt, kind of a scraggly beard, long, long blonde hair pulled back, a gentleman guy. His fingernails are painted purple and black. Each different nail had a purple and black, but they were all faded and chipped. And then he had a sundress on. And with the sundress, and then like I don't know how else to say it, the pads in a bra. Women would know about this, like say the boob pad, sorry, but there's padding that you could like inserts that you could put in a bra, and are like hanging out above the bra of this sundress of a very hairy chest. Again, this is, I believe, was a man, but and I say that just to try to give the picture.
Yeah.
But the whole picture didn't really compute in my mind, and so looked pretty strung out. And so my mind, if I had given a moment to judge or to assume about this person, I probably would not have talked to him because it could seem scary. Because the media, we've been programmed to believe someone like that will be scary. He's a drug addict. He's confused. He doesn't know who he is. And so don't talk. But because love led me, probably because I'd just been in the redwoods, I blurted out, "Do you know anything about redwoods?" Well, we proceeded to have this 10-minute beautiful conversation. He was very much in his right mind about redwoods. He used to work in forest management, and
Oh,
he was
wow.
giving me information about fairy circles in redwood trees. And even one of them's called like the Jesus image when you chop one. I was like, I didn't know that. I said, "Thank you so much." And in fact, the gentleman looked so sketchy that another man drove along in a car, and he could see me having a conversation with this gentleman. He stops, gets out, looks at me, and he's like, "You having a good evening?" You know what I mean? Like he was thinking if
He
I'm in
was he
trouble,
was
he was
he was listening to love. He was
he
listening
was,
to love
yeah, he
too.
was like giving me a way out if I needed. And I said, "Yeah, I am." And then he's like, "Okay." And he looked at me like, "You sure?" That kind of little signal, and gets back in his car and drives away. Meanwhile, I'm still talking to this gentleman. And I just said, "Thank you so much. I just learned about redwoods that I didn't know." And I said, "I see the image of God in you. Thank you so much." And he goes, "Do you know what my last name is?" I said, "No. My last name is Godly." I'm like, "Wait." And he's like, Godley, Jeff Godley. And I said, "Oh my God. Well, of course your last name is Godley. I'm Melinda. It was so good to meet you." And then the interesting thing is, he said, "Well, yeah, 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 I am whatever you say that I am." And he goes, and he kind of did this whole, started saying all these I am statements. And one of them was virgin killer. "I'm a tree feller, fire putter outer, fire starter, virgin killer." And I said, "Okay, I don't know about that, but these are things probably that he's been told or things that he has believed. And no wonder there's some confusion, and probably a lot of hardship in his life. You know, looking at him, you could see that,
Yeah.
and just etched on his face, so much pain. And yet, when you get to the humanity and the godliness of somebody, I got to see an image of God that I wouldn't have if I had made a judgment, if I had let fear lead me. I would not have had a conversation, but my love led me and my body knew, like energetically, I can talk to this person. I don't need to be afraid. Now there's other instances where you're like, but not being guided or led by fear, not being guided or led by the old program that if this person looks like this, stay away. That could be scary. Let love guide you. Let love guard you. And when you do, then you have these encounters that you normally wouldn't have, if we're just following the programs of this is what I believe about this person because I see this about them. And I was so grateful to have an encounter with this part of God I wouldn't have seen had I let fear guide me. And I think so many of us have been
Yeah.
programmed to let fear guide us, and we don't see it that way. We just see it as,
No.
well, I need to be careful. You don't actually let love guide you and guard you. And I'm not saying this to make me look good or like, oh, you stopped for this weirdo. No, no, no. I say this because if I had stopped for a moment to let my eyes go and then make a judgment, I wouldn't have said anything to him. And so in that instant of intuition, that inter knowing, the inter seeing into somebody beyond what they are presenting, and I can see, look at this. Of course, your name is Godly. Of course. Hello. I was so grateful for that experience. So I can continue to be aware of letting love guide me. And even, just as a tip or whatever, like in a situation, is love guiding me or is fear guiding me in
Yeah.
this moment? Because
That's a beautiful question.
we're going to be led by either love or fear. We're going to make decisions. Every decision we make is going to be by fear or love, and just stopping to consider. And if you're not sure, go drop the anchor into your heart, listen to your body, listen to your intuition. What's my first gut heart response? Go with that. And that's when love is guiding us, love is leading us. And that's why I said, Tara, at the beginning, I'm like, girl, I could talk about a lot of
I
things
know.
for a long time. So
It's,
I'm just going to like,
but it also, I think too, it's because when I talked about like we're the same but different. And one of my mentors, Ron Dart, will say freedom from or freedom for. And
mhm,
in this freedom for space and the better truth, when we have more healing from trauma, whatever our trauma is, the vividness, and then we're weird. Like Melinda's weird and I am weird.
mhm,
And so you were in your own way. You were just being Melinda in the redwood forest, letting the trees speak to you, caring about the trees in a way that if we are in our own way, we might not.
mhm.
And in your own unique, weird connection to your divine identity, you have this divine encounter. And yeah, we're not gonna, not everybody out there is safe for us to have
Right,
encounters with,
right.
but there are people who are really safe, and there are trees that are really safe,
Yeah,
and there are rocks that are really safe, and there's all sorts of beautiful things and beautiful ways that we can hear the world differently when the static noise of the trauma is calm, and we can be present.
yeah.
Yeah, that's a great story.
Yeah, I was so um impacted by that. I actually shared that with our friend Paul Young, and because I mentioned him a lot. And one thing that in the beginning of my spiritual direction, and my spiritual director knows Paul as well, and she said, find someone, Melinda, that looks like who could look like Jesus most to you, and immediately it's Paul Young. And I'm not putting him on a pedestal, but I know, but he's like, I have nothing left to hide because he's done so much internal work and healing that there's this genuine, beautiful humility and authenticity to him. And but knowing that nobody is whatever perfection means anyway. And I just posted something by Richard Ward today about perfection on Instagram, but it's the coming to the place of just sort of accepting all that is, including all the imperfections. And that's like perfection, if you want to call it that, because there's always it's always going to be a line that continues to move if you try to set some bar. And I just say that about Paul because and being with him, my body feels safe with him. And you're
Yeah.
saying not everybody's safe. That's true. So listen to your body. If your body's like, no, no, no. That's why I listen to kids. Like if a kid doesn't want to hug somebody, don't make them. That could be a whole other conversation. But they know, they know, and it's not because
Yeah.
it's an outward judgment of what they look like. Listen to that inner child, and listen to your body and what is it saying. And Paul Young is one of the safest people that I know, And so I shared it with Paul because that's what he would do too. He would
Yeah.
stop for that person, with seeing it through love's eyes. And
Yeah.
yeah,
And Paul will say, I'm just doing the next right thing.
yeah,
And
yeah,
I love that's why he is a friend on the trail. That's why he is a wise, good, loving mentor for us. Um, and he just, yes, people who live and express love, and it's just a better way.
yeah,
And it
it
is
is.
Jesus-y, like that is
Yeah,
God is love. Love is always loving or is not love.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so we're gonna wind things down. Anything like I'll make sure I have Melinda's information below. Tell them a little bit about what face to face network.
Yeah, we really exist to help people heal from trauma and using the Emmanuel approach and teaching people, training people. My role is different than Kathy's, who's my business partner. I'm coaching coaches, so we're training up leaders and the multiplication effect, and just training people up to actually be able to coach people, not just facilitate, but a level up to coach people who are learning facilitation skills. Um, and so I'm part of the face-to-face network. As far as that goes, that's my job. It's what I get paid for. And but I really see it as a holistic. You can't separate and go, I'm just teaching this. The more I learn and discover, the more I heal, the more I expand in my awareness, in my consciousness, and just my own growth and being with myself. I share that with the people that we're teaching. You've got to approach this work, if you want to call it that, again, being led with love. And so,
Yeah.
sitting across from somebody, as I know you do, Tara, because I hear your heart and see it, with no agenda. I'm not trying to even heal anybody. And I had a conversation with someone who is in inner healing world too, and it's not a judgment against what they said, but she said, "Oh yeah, we got to get these women in and get them healed." And the heart behind it is good, but that's still an agenda. I've got to get them
Yeah.
healed. And I feel like that's that push of I've got to get someone from here to here. Whereas if I am with someone, and even if I am doing an
Yeah.
Emmanuel session with them, my only agenda, and this is what I'll teach my students and the coaches, my only agenda, if I have to have one, is be present with and lead with love. And whatever that
Love it.
looks like for that person, that's going to bring healing. That's going to bring transfer, whether I use a manual approach or something else. Love heals, love transforms. And a manual approach is just one way of doing that because they are connecting with love, and that's Jesus. And but they're also connecting with you as a
Yeah.
person, and that is love. So that's what I'm doing on a job basis, training people in a manual approach, doing one-on-one sessions, been doing that for a very, very long time. And again, just letting love lead and guide and coming into greater revelation of that for myself. I'm in school to be a spiritual director in about 9 months. I will be a certified spiritual director and
Wow.
be looking for clients, although I am looking for directees right now that don't mind paying like $10. I'm allowed to charge, but I am meeting with directees now as part of a practice, just like you would have in a therapeutic world. You start meeting with clients
Yeah.
in that beginning stage and
So low
phase.
cost
Yes.
spiritual
Yes.
direction people is what we're saying, is Melinda
Yeah.
is low cost spiritual direction
Yeah.
right now. I yeah, and I what I hear you saying is that part of the, and I totally believe, I agree with you, and your view of working with people is we are just being image bearers of love.
Hmm. Yeah.
And everybody is an image bearer of love, and we're just come alongside of somebody else and encouraging people to see their true image, which is love.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Exactly.
that's beautiful, Melinda. Wow, I just love you so much. I'm so glad that we get to hang out, and I will put all of Melinda's information below. And yeah, bless you, sister, and all that you and Kathy are doing with face to face network.
Thank you. And we do have 3 spots left at Dashaway, which is a women's retreat that I do some contemplative inner journey exercises, lead the women through that at
Yeah,
Lake Tahoe in Nevada, August 15th to the 17th. So I'm not sure if this is coming out before then, but if it does, there's still 3 spots left,
yeah.
dashawayweekends.com. And it's a different experience than your normal women's retreat. Tara, I wish you could come. That would
I
be
wish I could come
so
one
much
day.
fun.
One
One
day I'll
day.
come. Especially when you do the tree stuff, because I think my sort of my spiritual rituals and liturgies and things could use a little bit of the ants. I love
Mm.
ants. I have an ant. Yeah, on my property on Vancouver Island, I have an ant that lives in my backyard, and he's a dear friend of mine. Treebeard.
Well,
He's not the
oh,
original, but or maybe he is. I don't know. He's my Treebeard.
oh gosh, that is one place that I have wanted to go for so long. It really is. I totally off the subject, but the show Alone, have you seen that show?
Only of
It,
one or two.
oh my gosh, well, one of the seasons is there on Vancouver Island and they gotta
Uh,
survive on their own. I mean, but you get to see a lot of Vancouver Island.
I'm pretty sure our big forest, like our giant trees, is a redwood forest on Vancouver Island as well.
I need to check it out. It
You
could
need to
be because
come
that's on the West Coast and
when
that's where they live.
you guys are going to come visit me, you and Kathy, and we'll have
Amen. Amen.
a girl hang sesh. My husband will have to come, but he's kind of like one of the girls.
That would be so much fun. I would
Yay.
love it.
Okay.
Thank you for having me, Tara.
Yes. Love to you.
You too, my friend. Thanks.